tool
If we really can come up with these machines,
of a new kind, of an interactive kind.
Ladies and gentlemen, Apple has an AI problem.
Apple is lagging right now.
Apple's AI is floundering.
They're struggling in AI. Tim Cook should be fired as CEO.
Under Steve Jobs, it was very much a concept-oriented company. Under Tim Cook, however, it's become a very product-oriented company, or what I call a mechanic.
Giant company is late to massive technological shift, falls behind and never recovers, dies. That is a tale as old as time, and it does repeat itself.
And now it's shaking Apple's trillion-dollar empire. You know, there was a time when Apple invented the future. When Steve Jobs was leading Apple, every keynote felt like a revolution waiting to happen. And when Siri launched, it was 4 years ahead of everyone else.
It's a feature all about our voice.
We have a flat
How do I
tire.
tie a bow tie?
What's the fastest way to Hartford
Do I need an
Hospital?
umbrella in New York this week?
Because for decades, technologists have teased us with this dream that you're going to be able to talk to technology and it'll do things for us.
Siri has been called as revolutionary as the first computer mouse.
But fast forward to today, while Alexa can run your home, Google can actually predict what you need even before you do. But Siri feels like a dumb assistant in the age of AI.
Everyone's worried about losing their jobs to AI, but the only person that should really lose their job is Siri.
They announced the iPhone 16, but the biggest drawback were the AI Siri features. As you know, Siri hasn't really worked well for years.
Today, in a world where OpenAI is dropping GPT-5 and agentic features, while Google is flexing with Veo 3, Apple's biggest updates are still camera improvements and better battery life. And to make it worse, Apple Intelligence is in beta even after 1 full year. Now this is where it gets terrifying. If you remember, back in 2007, when touchscreens took over, BlackBerry doubled down on what it felt safe, which was privacy, security, and tradition. But 6 years later, the company that once owned half the smartphone market was reduced to a business school case study in failure. And today, while the AI revolution is rewriting every single industry, Apple is clinging to what it knows best, which is privacy, polish, and perfection. So the question is, what's really going wrong inside Apple's AI strategy? While OpenAI could build world-changing systems, how is Apple stuck with $60 billion in cash? What exactly is Apple's AI problem? What are the dangers that could actually break the most valuable company on earth? And most importantly, can Apple still come out of this AI crisis before it's too late? But before we move on, I have a very exciting message to give you from Emergent AI. People, what if I told you that you could build a working app, not a mock-up, not a prototype, but a real production-ready app just by giving the right prompt? Would you believe me? Every builder knows that ideas come fast, but execution, that's where dreams die. You've got a 2 AM idea that could change the world, but by morning, you're buried in code, bugs, and backend chaos. Now imagine this. You simply open Emergent AI, describe your idea in plain English, and within minutes, it spins up the entire app, including login, backend, and payments. Everything ready to launch. That's not fantasy, guys. That is Emergent AI, the world's first agentic vibe coding platform. Multi-AI agents that can think, code, test, and deploy so that what you build is production ready from day one. Emergent AI hit 2 million builders and 2.5 million apps within 3 months, becoming one of the fastest growing AI platforms in the world and India's fastest ever. And let's be real, guys, most AI tools stop at the prototype, but Emergent doesn't. It gives you the boring but essential stuff: native backend, real-time collaboration, GitHub integration, rollback safety, Teams, and one-click deploy. So you don't have to juggle between 3 random plugins. And if you've ever said, I have an idea but I don't have time to build it, this is your sign. Go to the link in the description to give your idea in one prompt and watch it come alive. So stop scrolling and start building with Emergent AI.
Everyone says savings are boring. I say it's profitable. They say FTs are the real deal. But I parked 50,000 in my Slice savings account. And it's already earning compounding.
to understand Apple's problem, you first need to understand the simple concept of APIs or Application Programming Interface. API acts as a digital bridge between two systems. So it allows one app like Siri to send a request to another system like OpenAI's GPT servers and get back an answer. For example, if you ask Siri, tell me the history of Paris and why Eiffel Tower was built, behind the scene, Siri converts your voice into text. That text is packaged as an API request like this, and this request is then sent to OpenAI's cloud service. And then GPT-4o processes this query, burns compute power, and generates a response which is sent back to Siri through the same API, and then Siri speaks back to you. Now, every time this interaction happens, there's a currency exchange happening behind the scenes. This is done with something called tokens. Tokens are nothing but a digital currency in the world of API. So every time you ask ChatGPT a question, ChatGPT charges you an input token charge and output token charge. So if you ask ChatGPT about the history of Paris, this interaction might cost you 500 input tokens and 1000 output tokens. And each token is priced at a certain amount. If you look at this chart, 1 million input tokens cost $2.5 and 1 million output tokens cost $10. So if I end up consuming 2 million tokens in a month via Siri, Apple technically has to pay OpenAI $12.5. But the fun fact is that right now, Apple pays OpenAI $0. Why? Because Apple wants intelligence that it doesn't have, and OpenAI needs more users. But this is where Apple has a problem. The moment OpenAI starts charging Apple, something disastrous starts to unfold. After all, if you look at OpenAI is also losing $5 billion a year. So OpenAI at some point or the other has to start charging Apple. Now most people will be like, yeah bro, so what? If OpenAI starts charging Apple, Apple will start paying OpenAI. Apple anyway sells an iPhone for $800. So what's the big deal in paying $20 to OpenAI? Well, this is where in this newsletter by Migdad Jafar, he explains that while in traditional SaaS, your profit margin increases with users, in AI SaaS, the profit margin actually starts to go down. And this is the product head of OpenAI who's saying this. Let me tell you what that means. You see, in SaaS, companies have large fixed costs and large variable costs, but the variable costs don't change much. In fact, they decrease with scale. For example, if you're running Canva has fixed costs like engineers, office and computers, and it also incurs variable cost like storage and servers on the basis of how many people use and store files in Canva. So let's say the fixed cost is $1 million. Now, regardless of whether Canva has 1 or 2 million users, this fixed cost won't increase. Similarly, as the number of users scale, Canva will also incur variable costs like cloud storage and server costs. But the beauty of scale is that you can get discounted rates for both cloud and server. So your cloud vendor might charge you $0.023 per GB for the first 50 TB per month, but for the next 450 TB per month, he will charge you $0.022 per GB. And over 500 TB per month, the cost will drop down to $0.021 per GB. So with scale, your cost actually goes down. But in AI SaaS, scale is a disaster. Why? Look at this. Today, Apple has 2.36 billion active devices. But even if 1 billion devices make 12 requests per device per day, that is 12 billion requests per day. Assuming each request costs 1,500 tokens, the daily cost turns out to be $180 million per day. And if you compute the cost for the entire year, it turns out to be $65 billion per year. Fun fact, Apple's net profits as of 2024 was $93 billion. So if this query count goes from 12 to 24 requests per day, OpenAI's bill alone would be $130 billion. And even if OpenAI gives a 50% discount to Apple and bleeds into losses, Apple will still lose 50% of its profits only to OpenAI. So the moral of the story is that in traditional SaaS, you have a compounding margin, but in AI SaaS, you have compounding cost and diminishing margins. And this is a big problem. Now you might say, Ganesh, come on. Google and Microsoft will also face the same problem, right? So why are we just targeting Apple? Well, as an Apple fan, even I thought the same. But Google and Microsoft have an entire AI stack, whereas Apple is just the surface layer. So if you look at Microsoft, it already has significant stake in OpenAI, and it literally hosts OpenAI on Azure. So when OpenAI's valuation shoots up, it again increases the value of